Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's rap session. I am your host, Ebony, and today we are here to talk with you about some important news, and that is, excuse me, it's about minimum wage and that it is not enough for people to live in today's society. And I have a special guest today. Her name is Miss Marilyn Hemingway of the Gullah Geechee Chamber. But first, I would like to bring you a word from our sponsor, who is Access Alliance Insurance Group, where they treat you like family. Right now, they have some child policy that are available to you for right now for under $5 a month that you are able to get for your children in this upcoming year. So we are going to go ahead and bring on Miss Marilyn Hemingway of the Gullah Geechee Chamber. Hi, Miss Marilyn.
Hi, how are you, Ebony? Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. So we're going to talk about about minimum wage and that it isn't enough for people to survive on. So I know that you have some information, and I appreciate you so much. You are just the whiz at policy, and I just love talking to you. You are just a genius all in your own. So right now, minimum wage is what, $7.50 right now in South Carolina?
$7.25 is minimum wage, the federal minimum wage.
Wow. So really, when I was in high school, which was like almost 20 years ago, minimum wage, I think was maybe $6.50. So it hadn't raised up that much in 20 years.
That's correct. It's actually been stuck at $7.25, probably about 12 years. It somewhat did get raised on a regular basis, but for political reasons, it's been stuck at $7.25. I know a minimum for 10 years.
Wow. That's crazy. Yeah. So how is minimum wage adjusted? What warrants minimum wage to be increased at any point?
Congress determines the minimum wage. I don't know I don't know if they're sitting around in a room saying, hey, $7.25, that's a good that's a good minimum wage. I'm sure they have their policymakers and their staff persons who look at things like inflation adjusted minimum wage and how inflation impacts it, like cost of housing, how people can afford it, etc., benefits, etc., things like that. And they come up with a figure, and then they debate just like any other policy or bill, and they compromise and they come with something they think can be passed. And just in the last few years, minimum wage has become such a lightning rod in this nation, I believe, because of the polarity between the parties, that that's one reason it has not been raised. They have such opposing ideologies.
Yeah. So regardless of which party a person belongs to, I know in South Carolina, I'm pretty sure they can't think a raise of $1 over the past 12 years has been enough. So for those of you that are just coming on, we appreciate you for coming on the rap session tonight. We have our special guest, Ms. Marilyn Hemingway of the Gullah Geechee Chamber. And I'll show you what sparked our conversation for tonight. And it is this particular meme that was put up actually by Senator Saab. $600 is $15 an hour for 40 hours. So it shows the real problem there is that if a person can make more on unemployment, then that means that the job doesn't pay enough for them to live, basically, right?
That's true. That's very true. And so let me tell you what bothers me about that also. One, it's very much revealing in America that we have our priorities messed up. And if you can't make a living on one job, minimum wage, that's an issue. That's an issue. And what do I mean by it's an issue? There is no one in any state on minimum wage right now that can afford a 2-bedroom apartment rental.
Wow.
So what ends up happening is you need 2 or 3 jobs just to get a basic 2-bedroom apartment. Wow. And I'm not talking We're not talking penthouse 2-bedroom apartment. We're talking about your basic bedroom apartment, that a 2-bedroom apartment that maybe a single person may want to stay in and maybe have an office or extra room. Maybe a single parent, male or female, with the kids coming over or kids living with them, they want a separate bedroom. Maybe just a family period, a 2-parent family where you have the parents in the bedroom and maybe a child or two in another bedroom as they grow, because you hope to achieve the American dream. But if you cannot afford a 2-bedroom apartment, how are you going to save for the American dream of owning a home? It's
That's
not
so,
possible. It's
that's
not
it.
possible. And it used to be where minimum wage, you could have a 1-parent household, and usually traditionally it was the mother staying home raising the kids. In an ideal traditional world for African Americans, that actually has never been true. That's actually an American myth, but that's another conversation. But at least with the minimum wage, you were able, I remember the day my parents, where they were making more than a minimum wage, but but you were able to stay up with inflation. And my parents, they sent me to college. So
Mhm.
now you can't afford that. You go into debt. You got to go take loans out, and you go into debt, and you leave college, and you're making $7.25 an hour. You can't afford to pay your school loan back. You can't afford to have a decent 2-bedroom apartment. Then add in that, if you want to get a car, it's not just buying the car. It's getting insurance for that car, the
Right.
maintenance of the car, it's buying food. And I was just listening today that food on average has the price of food since the start of the pandemic has gone up 20%. And now you add all these costs together, transportation, the cost of transportation, not just buying the vehicle, but you got to include maintenance and insurance. You've got to include your food costs. You've got to include your rental costs. You've got to include maybe school, your school loans.
Right.
It
All that.
you cannot afford to live on one job paying minimum wage of $7.25, $7.25 an hour.
Right.
If if the federal minimum wage had kept pace with workers' productivity since 1968, the inflation adjusted minimum wage would be, and I told you earlier it was $21, and that actually has changed. It's $18.67. It was $21 a few years ago, but now with more information and statistics, it's $18.67. They push for $15 an hour because that's a compromise. That's like
Right.
people maybe could swallow that and say, I could see people doing $15 an hour. All right.
Right.
And so this unemployment, $600 that extra people are getting during the pandemic is what they should be getting paid anyway.
Anyway,
Yeah.
exactly. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
that's with the whole minimum wage thing. So let me ask you this. So if people should be getting paid minimum wage because of inflation between 18 and maybe $21 an hour, so what effect does that have? So like for me, as a small business owner, if I have 3 employees, I may have to lay off a person in order to pay the $18 per hour. What's the pro? Of course we know the pros, but what could be a con? We know the pro for the employee, but what could be the con for the employer?
Well, actually, I don't think it would be a con to pay people more minimum wage, because you got to remember this. Um, if you pay your employees more minimum wage, that's also other businesses doing the same thing. If the federal minimum wage is raised, all businesses are going to pay that minimum wage eventually. So we have to also keep in mind the federal minimum wage does not happen overnight. When they do raise it and change it, it is always um it's not overnight. They do it in stages,
And
okay?
it's
So
okay.
businesses can adjust.
Can
All
adjust.
right. So,
Okay.
but if all, but let's say everybody eventually raises that minimum wage over the time period, over a year, year and a half, right? what ends up happening is if I make more money, what am I going to do? I'm going to spend it.
Right.
I'm going to go to your small business more often because I have more money to spend, which is more money in the economy. The working person drives the economy. They have fooled us with this so-called trickle-down economic theory that if you give more money to corporations, they're going to go out there and spend money and hire people, and it's going to trickle down. It has never trickled down.
Wow. So
the economy, and this pandemic is also proving that the economy is driven by working people. That's why they want you to get back to work. But what they're doing is they're generating money two ways. One, the government is subsidizing corporations for trillions of dollars. Okay?
That's right.
And they're also starving the beast by forcing working people to go out at minimum wage and work and create debt, because there are people now you're going, because you're not making enough to cover your bills. What are you doing? You're going to the payday lenders and borrowing against your own money, and you never get ahead. It's designed that way.
Wow.
And the only people who are making money are the corporations being subsidized by the government anyway.
Right.
And they're making money off of you. So it's a vicious cycle. That's why I've said, of course they want people to hurry up and get back to work. Because when you are well rested and you have time to think about it and listen to shows like you're doing, your rap session, then you start thinking about what? Minimum wage. Let me think about this. Let me think about why I'm always trying to stay ahead of that payday lender or title loan. Well, that's not right. If I actually got paid more, I would not have to go to the payday lender.
Have to do it. Exactly. So guys, thank you so much for tuning in. If you are tuning in tonight, thank you so much. Tonight it sparked our conversation actually about a meme that Senator Sapp put up. It's about $600 equals up to be $15 an hour for 40 hours if somebody worked that long. If someone is making more on unemployment, the real problem is that their job doesn't pay a living wage. And we have Miss Marilyn Hemingway on to talk with us about that today.
Yeah, and we've been fooled. We've been bamboozled. And we need to stop being bamboozled. We need to start getting some education about this. And don't just rely on me. I've been reading about this, studying this stuff for years because it's just what I do. I'm not an economist, but I read. And it's just stuff that's always interested me. And it angers me because I'm angry for my people. And not just Black people, but poor people. Poor people.
People, right.
People.
Exactly.
And most of us are poor, and we don't realize that either. And what did I say that most of us are poor? Even middle class people, this pandemic has shown, miss one paycheck. You're not middle class anymore. Look at all the people in these food banks now.
Yep.
These are not poor people. The food banks have already been taking care of the working poor. The people using food banks now are middle class people.
Right.
Who lost their job overnight and didn't have a check coming in. So what they did, they did that extra $600 on top of unemployment. People aren't using that to stay away from work. They're using that to survive.
That's right. Mm-hmm. And even on top of that, I feel for the children. You know, usually children are used to getting 2 meals at school, and now we're talking about $200-300 a week just to feed a couple, 2 or 3 kids. And I've been hearing it from the parents a whole lot. So it's again, all of it's interconnected. It's like a domino effect, one thing triggers another one. So lastly, can you answer our question on what can people do to encourage Congress to increase minimum wage? Is there anything people can do?
Vote them out. Vote them out. Vote them out. At this point, and I know we try not to be partisan on a lot of these shows, but honestly, the Republicans at this point are not about policy. They are about ideology. And their ideology is not to help working people or middle class. It is about putting money into their own pockets and putting their money into corporations. And I am not saying that to say that the Democrats are a perfect party. They're not. but they are the party right now who are more concerned about the people, the working people and the middle class. We got to look at what's going on. The Democrats in May, they passed the second stimulus bill back in May.
Yes.
It is not until the last 2 weeks that the Republicans started to even talk about it, debate it within the Senate, between the Senate and the White House. So then they could go then debate it with the House. They just started that now, trying to reconcile the Senate version with the House version. And the Senate is coming from the Senate that is controlled by the Republican. They want to cut that $600, which, let me tell you, $600 wasn't even enough to begin with. They're fighting over the $1,200 because Democrats want to increase that, which it actually should be increased. Because every other major developed country, minimum, I think on average, is like a little below $2,000 a month that they're giving their citizens until this crisis, pandemic crisis, is over. Okay? This is just so people can pay their bills, y'all, and survive until we get this pandemic under control. Then people can go back to work.
Right. Yeah, so, I look at countries that they're paying $900 a week. You know, the other countries that are, you know, making sure, number one, that people have access to healthcare even. You know, a lot of people lost their healthcare. You know,
because our healthcare is tied to our jobs. So if you lose your job, you lose your healthcare.
Exactly.
Overnight, 20 million people lost their healthcare.
That's right.
Somebody's going to end up paying for it. And it's going to be us, the taxpayers, or the what do you call it? Our monthly premium, excuse me, our healthcare premium. One of the reasons our healthcare premiums are so high is, one, we're paying for people who are uninsured. Two, we're paying for marketing. Three, we're paying for high salaries.
That's right.
It's a gimmick. Healthcare was never intended to be profit driven. That was a temporary solution after World War II, and it was supposed to be ended and go to nonprofit. And they didn't do that because they were making too much money.
Right.
So, I mean, people just need to get educated about really what's going on and what's happening. And the information is out there. You just have to be discerning on what you read and who you listen to. Healthcare should not be tied to your job. You're right. We're the only country. People didn't lose their health care. They may have lost their job, but they can still get their health care.
Well, yeah, even if they got, so some people are not going to the doctor during the pandemic in America because they're afraid, number one, and then number two, that they may not have access to health care, and then number three, they don't have any insurance to pay for it. So,
that's correct. That's correct.
For those of you that are tuning in, we are talking about minimum wage. It isn't enough. And according to research, Ms. Marilyn says that inflation means that minimum wage should be at least $18 per hour. So I appreciate you, Ms. Marilyn, for coming on. Is there any last words that you'd like to give tonight before we sign off?
I want to go back to that question about what we can do. Yes, we can vote them out, but what you can do right now is start making phone calls. Start making phone calls, especially to Mitch McConnell in the Senate and those other senators, and tell them to pass the stimulus bill, because we need that other $1,200, and folks need that $600 on top of that unemployment. And you know, that is the minimum they can do. It should be better than that, but they need to get off. They need to get off their butt and do the right thing by the American people. And has citizens, has residents of this country, we have the right to pick up the phone and call our senators and call our representatives and say, get this stimulus done. In particular, your senators, in particular, Mitch McConnell, needs to be called. This is really a moral question. This is a moral question. And we need to demand that they do the right thing, because we have to remember, we do not report to our elected officials. They report to us. They are public servants. And through a campaign is their job interview. And when you place your vote, that's you telling who you want to hire. So they need to report to you and listen to the people. And we have every right to demand a living wage.
Yep, absolutely.
So make your phone call. Yes, send your letters and then go vote.
Go vote. So guys, we're going to go ahead and sign off now. What we want to tell you again, vote. Register or correct your info at scvotes.gov if you are in South Carolina. Now, also, what I also want to encourage you all to do is, that does affect us for the next 10 years, but please register to vote. It's so very easy. You don't have to fill out any paper or anything. You can just do it right on your phone, so that you can start voting people in that can increase minimum wage, because in South Carolina, minimum wage is $7.25 or $7.50. That is not enough for people to live off of. And plus, if you're paying taxes, they take almost a third of that. So that means people take home even less. So I want to thank you all for joining. I want you guys to take a listen at this video as we are signing off. Until next time, good night.
Good night.
Electoral votes, more than 270, more than enough to become